Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome. I'm Valmore. So I recently completed my journey through the Heroes Feast Cookbook. It's been a few weeks now, and I've decided I'm going to do a tier list of all the recipes. If you watch a lot of YouTube videos, you're probably familiar with tier lists. They're very common for everything from video games to anime, D&D classes, just about anything where people want to rank it and get views. But if you're not familiar with tier lists, I'll go through it a bit. I'm going to take each recipe, I'm going to put it in one of the tiers of rankings. S is for the recipes that you absolutely have to try. A is for the very good recipes that you should probably still try. B are for the recipes that are good. C are for the recipes that need a little work. And D are for the recipes that you can just avoid. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot in the D tier. Without any further ado, this is my tier list ranking of the D&D Heroes Feast Cookbook Human Cuisine section. Let's get started. So the first recipe in the cookbook is Traveler Stew. So I think what I'm going to put that is in the B. It was good. It was exactly what you want a beef stew to be. It definitely personifies what you think of when you think of tavern food that you would encounter in a D&D game. It's easily customizable. You can put whatever vegetables or meats in it that you want. Overall, like I said, I'm going to go with a B on that. The next recipe is the Iron Rations. I'm going to give those a B as well. It's really just a charcuterie board. You can put anything on there you want. The recipe itself doesn't really need to be followed. Next up is the Sword Coast Seafood Bouillabaisse. This one, I'm going to give an A. I thought it was very delicious. Again, it is one that you could mix and match with whatever seafoods you'd like. But what really stands out is the actual broth that you cook everything in. It has just a wonderful sweetness and that really herby taste from the fennel and the anise liqueur. It really was delicious. Coming in next is the pan-fried Knucklehead Trout. I think this one's going to go, again, on a B. Although I very much also want to put it in as an A. I think I'm going to go with A because the recipe also has this absolutely wonderful shallot lemon butter that stand out, made that dish really fantastic. Otherwise, it was a nice, lightly crisp piece of fish, and that's always a winner. Coming in next is the Amphail braised beef. Now, there is no doubt this is the first S dish I'm going to put out there. I loved the slight sweetness of the pear, the cider that just gave it a bit of a pop of flavor. Everything just braised so well, the meat fell apart. It was absolutely wonderful. Cannot recommend it enough. It's delicious. You definitely don't want to miss out on that one if you have this cookbook. Next up is the recipe with the longest title in the book. The Homlet Golden Brown Roasted Turkey with Sausage Stuffing and Drippings. Again, I'm going to take this to a B as well. It was good. It was a nice roasted turkey. Some really fantastic stuffing. Really nothing wrong with this dish. It was very good. And next up is the first dish that I made on this channel. And that is Gurdats. Now I want to give them an A. I do. But they really do deserve to be a B. The filling was good. And I love mushrooms. They're one of my favorite things to eat. But I said it when I made this. And I even rectified that with the picture here. They needed a little bit more freshness to it. I put some fresh lemon juice on them, and they were delicious. And if that were in the recipe originally, they'd be A's. And if you do make it, have some lemon juice, or even some fresh parsley. It needed something a little fresh on top. Next up is another one that I really enjoyed, and that is hand pies. And I want to put them into the A section. They're delicious. The filling's delicious. The pie crust, now that I think about it, the pie crust I made myself. Without a recipe for the pie crust, I would say they're B. But if you're going to hand make your pie crust, which I recommend, it's not that hard and it really does make a difference, I would go ahead and put those in the A. And because the recipe just called for the store-bought pie crust, I think a B is where that should be. And again, it's one of those things you can fill it with whatever you'd like. Change the filling up, make it your own. And up next to the book was Dark Molasses Nutbread. So I think I want to give this an A. This was a very interesting recipe. It was packed full of different flours, There was cornmeal, there was rye flour, full of a lot of flavors. It was very dense, not very sweet, and just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful bread. And I think it should be one that you definitely look at if you're on the edge about making it. Go ahead and make it. It's worth it. Up next is the Trolltide candy apples. These are a tough one because in all honesty, I don't generally like anything that sweet. They were very sweet, even with a sour apple. Now, if you're someone that loves candied apples and you adore them, make this. I'm not that person. I wasn't a huge fan. This also is one that I made with a drink. I will be doing them separately. I just didn't have pictures of both to put in. Next up is Vedbread. This one's tough as well because it was very good. The flavor was delicious. It was just a nice buttermilk bread filled with this just delicious mushroom filling. This is also one of the first recipes and what has become a bit of a theme on my channel, where I'm not good at some of the baking elements of a dish, but the overall dish turns out to be very good. So I did screw up some of the baking elements, and that may be on me. And I think because of that, I will give this an A. This deserves you to take a look at it, especially if you're better at baking than I am. It's mushrooms, it's a buttermilk dough, it's cheese, it's delicious. Up next is a dish that got probably the most comments out of any of my other videos. Now, I cheated a bit, and I put the video out on my birthday at the time, so that got a lot of the comments. But it's also a dish that came in with a bit of history that already existed. And this is Otik's Skillet fried spiced potatoes. They're a dish that has existed in the D&D world for a long time. They've been mentioned in Dragonlance novels. They have a background already, and there was already a recipe that existed out there. I wasn't able to find it. It was in an old book, an old adventure booklet, I think. And my overall take on it was fantastic. They were crispy, they were a little spicy, which I love. I love spice. And it's, skillet fried potatoes. You can't really go wrong. Next up are the Yawning Portal Buttermilk Biscuits. Again, these are going S tier. Buttermilk biscuits, they were delicious. Very easy to make. And even after making this video, I've made this recipe now 4-5 times. It's very simple and it's delicious. Next up are the Kara-Tur Noodles. This is definitely a recipe I was disappointed with. Again, the recipe wasn't bad. It was boring. It was bland. It was such a generic take on a generic Asian dish. I think they would have done better choosing a regional noodle dish to put in there, but it just felt like they didn't want to choose a specific dish, so they just went with noodles, chicken, vegetables. Adding your own touches to it again, highly recommended. Coming up next were the Sembian Honey-Glazed Rothe ribs. These ones you should absolutely make. In the video, I made them for my family when I was visiting, and since then they've asked me to make them again. I made them again recently. They're still delicious. The family absolutely loved them. They devoured them. They can't recommend them enough. So make the Rothe ribs. You won't be disappointed. Next up is the Reghed Venison Pot Roast. It was a good pot roast. There wasn't a whole lot going into it. The recipe called for beef roast, and at the time I did look for venison, like a venison roast to actually try to make venison. I couldn't find it. It was difficult to find. It was not the right time of the year. But generally it's just a generic pot roast. And frankly, if you're going to make something pot roast like from this cookbook, I would go with the Amphail braised beef. Next up is the Castle Amber Onion Soup. This was a very, very good French onion soup. It was very strong. It was very sweet with caramelized onions. It was it. That's all it was. It was literally just caramelized onions. Very sweet, very good. I will say you're going to have some very bad breath after you eat it. It was very strong. So there was cheesy bread bites that were floating on top of the soup. The recipe called for you to toast them a little bit, and then cut a piece of garlic in half and rub raw garlic on it, then put the cheese on it and put it back in to finish toasting and melting the cheese. Rubbing the raw garlic on the toast is something I've definitely stolen anytime I make garlic toast. It really accentuates the garlic flavor. So if you don't make the onion soup, which I recommend you do, you definitely want to take that method for garlic bread. Next up is the Tavern Steak. This is an A as well. This was a very good recipe. The steak itself was fine. It was a well-cooked hamburger patty, but what really made this one stand out was the black olive and fig sauce. It was salty and sweet in all the right ways, and just when you put that on there and then got some of the dill sauce to go with it, the whole bite was just amazing. And now we're at the final recipe from the Human Cuisine section of Heroes Feast, and that is Gingerbread Man. Gingerbread Man was good. The cookie itself wasn't very sweet, but with a little bit of the icing that was on it, it was a very nice combination, and I enjoyed them. They were great the next day with a hot cup of coffee. And while my baking didn't suffer on this one, my cake decorating skills, my cookie decorating skills definitely came out as subpar. But again, very tasty. And that's the human section. I'm going to do the other sections as well. I hope you enjoyed. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at chef_Velmore. The links will be in the video description. My videos normally come out Monday afternoon, where I am cooking through many nerdy cookbooks. So come on by and give it a watch. Thanks for watching.